Hello and welcome to the 14th episode of When I Was Your Age. I'm your host, Roland Parker, coming to you from a lovely Alabama evening. And as always, it is a joy, pleasure, and a treat to have you here. Today's guest is Anderson Gore. I'm really excited to have him on and talk about his music. Before we get into it with him, though, I do have a little bit of housekeeping. Make sure that you follow the Instagram if you're not already at WIWYA pod. And thank you so much for the support. We're continuing to grow. We are currently at 628 followers on Instagram, and that has been a far cry from when we first started out. So I really appreciate all the love there. If you've got questions that you'd like me to ask the future guests, or you've got questions for me specifically, best way to do that would be through DMs on Instagram, or you can send them in via email as well. Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and bring Anderson into the stream. Anderson, how's it going with you, man? What's going on?
Things are good, man. Same old, same old. Just playing some music and about to get married, all that jazz, you know.
That's I love that. So you're getting married this weekend, right?
I am, correct, yeah.
Dude, congratulations. That is awesome. So how long have you and old gal been together?
So me and Kenzie have been together three years and 2 months now, a little over. So.
Love it. That's awesome. Well, I can imagine that would have a major impact on your music, and maybe we'll get into that a little bit further later. But yeah, to kind of get to know you a little bit more, I've got some questions for you if you don't care.
Not at all.
Sure. All right. So, where are you from, and where do you currently live?
Vestavia Hills, Alabama is where I'm from. Grew up there. Moved there when I was about 5 years old from Adamsville, Alabama, and now we live in Leeds, Alabama. Me and Kenzie have a house out here.
Nice, very cool. Of that. And so, what is it exactly that you do?
I'm a full-time musician. I play, 5 different instruments, and I'm kind of like a hired gun. I play around town, play out of town. I've been up the East Coast. I've been a few places here and there, but not everywhere yet. I hope to be. But and then I also do my own music as an artist. So
nice, very cool. Well, really quick, what are the instruments that you play?
Let's see, drums, guitar, piano, bass guitar. I sing. I also play a little bit of mandolin. People don't really know that, but
oh, that's cool. That's all. So with mandolin, is that like a pretty high learning curve? Because I know like banjo is like a pretty steep learning curve, but I would imagine that mandolin probably is as well. Is that hard?
Absolutely, yes. It is very hard. I'm actually still learning. I'm definitely a beginner still, but I can pick my way around here and there. You know.
That's good. So what kind of like transference of skill from like guitar to mandolin do you get? That there does it. Is there anything that you can take from guitar and like apply to the mandolin, or is it pretty alien?
Definitely like the picking and the fingers already being comfortable with your hands on a fretboard and with strings that makes it a little bit easier. But the tuning on all 4 strings, or technically all 8, is different than a guitar. So that's been weird.
Sure.
But yeah, I'd just say like your hands. If you already play an instrument, then it's a little bit easier to learn the chords and different notes and runs and stuff. But it's still pretty difficult even with that stuff. But
for sure, love that. We've gotten into it a little bit, but I do want to make sure if you guys are not already following Anderson on Instagram, make sure that you do so. I've thrown up the handle in the video stream, and we'll have it linked in the description of the podcast episode as well. So, Anderson, how old are you?
I'm 24 years old.
24. Does that how does it feel? Has it I ask because I don't know, each successive year of my life has felt like a little bit faster. And I'm wondering if you've kind of seen that in your own life.
It's definitely sped up. I didn't go to college, so I kind of got thrown into that right after high school, kind of like, all right, got to figure something out, which was music. But since then, man, it's definitely sped up more. I mean, moving out and being on my own, and then kind of basically working for myself in the music industry has sped up very quickly, especially as you start getting your name out there and moving forward in the industry. But 24 has been fast, but it's also a little bit slow because you kind of feel old, but you're not really yet. You know, you always get those people that are younger than you, and you're like, oh, I feel so old. But then you talk to somebody who's like 30, and they're like, oh, you're so young, man. You know, so you're kind of caught in between, like, I don't know, fast paced and slow paced. But it's interesting, man. You know, every new year for me is always just as interesting as the last, and it keeps going. But
Yeah, love that perspective. I feel that way also. I've identified on the podcast before. I forget who exactly I was talking to. I'm 27, but in a lot of ways, I still feel like I'm 22 in some aspects. Like there was so much life that happened in these past like 5 years that it's a little hard to feel like I'm not still that person. But I don't know. There's been a lot of growth there and everything like that. So that's awesome.
yeah.
What piece of media are you currently enjoying? And that could be a book, podcast, music, TV, even something that I haven't listed. I'd be interested to hear something like that. But guilty pleasure or something that you just enjoy, TV show that you're like excited for episodes to come out. What is that to you?
Man, that's so tough. I mean, as a creator, just like a creative mind, I guess I ingest so much content, I guess you could say, which people would be surprised to hear that I don't really listen to that much music.
Mhm.
Just because I do it all the time. Sometimes it can become like monotonous, especially for my ADHD brain.
Sure.
So actually, right now, man, I've thrown it back to Lord of the Rings. I've just been obsessed with the nostalgia that I've felt recently with the Lord of the Rings. I grew up on it, and me and Kenzie have been running them back and forth, man, over the past couple of weeks. We just love it.
Nice. I love that. No, that's so cool. I distinctly remember, and you probably did this too, but in like the fifth grade, growing up in the Vestavia school system, you go to like Camp McDowell, like with all of your grade. And I remember the chaperone of our trip, of like our cabin. He brought like the audiobook of, I think it was The Hobbit. I don't think it was Lord of the Rings, but I distinctly remember just like listening to and falling asleep to that.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously like watching the movies growing up and
Yeah,
everything like that. No, that's awesome.
that's a great series as well, man. I love The Hobbit too.
Yeah, no, that's great. Um, what is something that you'd consider a luxurious necessity? And I'm what I mean by that is something that maybe is ingrained into your routine or is a useful tool, but still kind of blurs the line between something that is really nice, really elevates your experience, but still kind of you offer some utility. The example I like to give is like a really good cup of coffee.
Okay.
That's very, very big in my routine. We make the espresso every morning, make the latte every morning, and it's I could technically go without it, but I appreciate that. So, is there something that sticks out for you when you think of that?
Man, I hate to be boring and repeat that, but you kind of stole the words right out of my mouth. My double shot of espresso every morning has got to be it for me, man. I can't can't really do anything without my espresso, you know.
Nice, love it. So, when did your relationship with coffee first start?
Oh man, funny story actually. I was I think 3 years old. Me and my mom were actually watching family videos the other day to put in for the wedding, and my pawpaw was sitting there with me on like a family Christmas, and he would always give me sips of his coffee, man. And my mom would always smack him on the arm. Do that, he's gonna get crazy, and I would, but it actually started that young, man. I'd go to work with him. He was a contractor, just a blue collar worker his whole life, and being the firstborn of three, I was his first grandson. So we'd ride around, go to work, and I'd actually just drink the cold coffee from the day before in the styrofoam cup.
Love that.
Ever since then, man, I've just loved it. And people have always kind of thought it was strange that I drank it black because I feel like when I was like 15 or 16, like there was such a heavy like Starbucks wave of
Sure.
like sugary coffee drink. And I always just loved it black, man, and that's why I started that way, and I still love it that way. Honestly, I still take my espresso shots just straight up.
Yeah, absolutely. That I for me, I didn't really start drinking coffee until college. Like there was the C store, like on campus, and it was a very slow intro into like the coffee experience. It was
Mhm.
like caramel latte. That's what I enjoyed. That's what I loved.
Yep.
Um, but I mean, it was so sweet, and then from there, it just like more and more started to enjoy it like a little bit less sweet, a little bit less cream, and like now I still appreciate both. Like I still like um, like a Starbucks treat every now and again, something like that. I like to make my own kind of stuff. Like I made like an apple, like a fall apple like syrup to make lattes with.
That's cool, man.
Yeah, and it's good. I like appreciating different aspects of coffee. So
Yeah.
that's why I kind of always think of that for that specific question. That's
Mhm.
how I relate to it. But I love getting people's different takes.
Yeah, man.
Um,
There's so many different ways to make it and drink it. You know, it's a pretty interesting thing. Coffee is. You can get really deep into that world.
yeah. Oh, 100%. Well, that's one of the bigger pieces of like my TikTok algorithm lately is I have like 3 creators that pop up pretty frequently, and they're all using like different gadgets and
Yeah.
doing different recipes and stuff like that, but it's very cool.
Could I ask you a quick question?
Yeah, yeah.
What's your favorite like coffee making apparatus?
I I feel like probably an espresso. Just I I think the application of being able to do like a latte or a cappuccino or just like have it straight up. Um, I like it that way. Like you can have it start so strong and then titrate it out to whatever strength you want it to be. And
That's a good point. Yeah.
yeah, I think that's it for me. I also the other main way that I have coffee is I have like a big um, glass container that my mom gave me with a mesh strainer for cold brew. So I just like load it up and then leave it out on the counter overnight, strain it out, and then like stick it in the fridge. And that's my cold brew for like the rest of the week, basically.
Very cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Never heard it that way before. That's awesome.
No, it's good. Dude, honestly, I don't know what it is about the extraction though, but really cannot have a whole lot of it. Like if I drink it like a normal cup of coffee, I'm just like fluttering in my chest and like find myself really like anxious. Cause
Mm.
like even at Starbucks, I think that they have a limit on like how much cold brew they can serve. And I don't know if it's
Saw
part of
that.
the extraction. It just doesn't denature the caffeine as much, or it gets more out or something, but you can get crazy wired off of the cold brew.
Can almost make you sick sometimes, man. Yeah. I think
Yeah.
that's why they limited. I think it was the nitro cold brew that
Mhm.
they capped, and you can only get it in like a small size or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think it was like making people freak out.
Yeah. So they don't realize like it's coming out like
Yeah,
strong. It's gonna be a different experience than just like a hot brewed coffee experience.
totally.
Um, so do you have any bits that you're doing? Be it like inside jokes or jokes that you kind of only tell for your own sake? That's anything like that. If you need some examples, I can try and throw some out for you.
You mean just like jokes in general?
So I would say so, but I've seen this emerge as of late, and that's why I've kind of added it into to this list of questions. Is people doing their jokes that are maybe directed a little bit towards their own amusement,
Mm,
and or it's like a constant kind of theme or response. So in the same way that you would respond like that's what she said. So
mm,
like almost any like situation that presented itself that it
yeah.
came up and you're like, oh, so that this is the formula. There's a million ways that you can plug it in.
Hmm.
Um,
For me, I'd say like not necessarily like a phrase or a joke, but I find ever since I was a kid, I've always been good at like impersonations and
mhm.
like I don't know, people think it's dumb, but I'll wake up in the morning and Kenzie will be like making coffee, and I'll be like, "Making a morning brew, are you?" And like that just
There you
makes me
go.
I'll choose a different voice all the time, and sometimes it'll just crack people up because they're like, "Where did that come from?"
Mm-hmm.
That's my only thing, to be honest. I'm not too much of a jokester, honestly. I'm more of a people watcher. If you
Sure.
get close to me, I guess, like I'll get. I guess everybody has that layer that they'll drop and might get a little crazy or whatever. But I'm not too much of a comedian, to be honest, man. I'm not that good at it.
It's a sure.
That much,
That's
you know.
yeah. It's I love that. I think the accent drop and kind of with no warning. That's a good way to drop it in. I think that's its own layer of humor. So that's a good answer. All right. So I like this question because I've seen people take it a whole slew of directions, just spanning across all different areas of seriousness and silliness. But given the opportunity to replace the national anthem with any song on your playlist, what would it be? And tell me a little bit about that decision.
Dude, it would have to be "Immigrant Song" by Led Zeppelin.
Ooh, okay. I've not heard that one yet. I like that.
It's a battle cry, man. You know.
Yeah, I dig that. That's super good. Yeah. Oh, that's good. Well, I have been compiling all of the answers that I've gotten into a Spotify playlist, and
Oh,
I
cool.
said on last episode that I was going to like publish the playlist and like share it, but I need to follow through and make that happen. So I will share it in a link probably in the bio of the Instagram, but make sure that Immigrant Song gets added to that. But nice, I like that.
That's a great.
And then last get to know you question here is how do we know each other?
So I actually met you the first time, I believe, at your house when I was in, shoot, man, third grade, maybe fourth, fifth grade, somewhere around there.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, maybe even like early middle school. I was friends with Max way back in the day. We were hanging out with school buddies, and I was actually cracking up with one of my buddies yesterday. We were talking about Black Ops, and I said, dude, actually the first time I ever played Black Ops was over at the Parker's house, and I was like, this game is awesome, man. Max me around, and I was like, this is so sick, and that was my game throughout middle school was Black Ops.
Oh yeah, I love it. That was like, so I remember we got an Xbox kind of at the tail end of Modern Warfare, like Modern Warfare 2, like the end of its popularity, and then like maybe like 2-3 weeks after getting an Xbox, that was when Black Ops came out, and that was like it was like trying to like catch up what it felt like to all of my friends who were like good at it and had been playing Call of Duty and games like that for a while.
Yeah,
But yeah, love it. So much fun. So many memories. So many like people to relate to with that. That's awesome.
yeah.
Well, all right. It's thanks for sharing a little bit about yourself.
Really?
Let's get a little deeper with it. And so obviously you mentioned that you are a musician, singer-songwriter as well. But tell me a little bit about when did you first connect with making music? Obviously, everybody can list off like when they connected with music itself, like listening and that kind of experience. But like making music, when do you have an image of yourself when you first produced a sound in an intentional way, or writing lyrics even? Like what was that like?
So growing up, my dad was a huge music fan. He loved really all types of music, and especially like 60s to early 2000s. He was just so heavy on, which was like some of the best music ever produced. And so I grew up on a lot of that. And by the time I turned like 13, I'd say 12 or 13, I found myself getting like frustrated with the fact that I didn't have anything of my own that I could, you know, show people or even vibe to myself. So at first I started around that age writing lyrics, and that was also really frustrating because it's really hard at first. But I did that for a couple of years, and didn't show anybody my songs, and maybe play one for my mom or dad here and there, my brothers. And then I'd say about 16 years old, I started messing around with GarageBand on my parents' laptop. and I would take it down to my room and just basically, it's a very user-friendly program, and I just kind of taught myself the basics of how to record and made a bunch of really crappy recordings, but I had a blast, and kept doing that for a while. I would actually cover songs and record them. Like a lot of John Mayer at the time, I was loving his guitar, and I loved U2 at the time, Coldplay, and I would cover their songs and record them. And then finally, I just started making up little jams in there or whatever. And then I was like, that's a song right there. Why don't we write something to it? And I would find that the music itself would help me write. It would almost paint a picture in my head once I would make the track, and it would give me an emotion or a feeling to write about, and I would write a verse. And I remember the first time I ever did that, I was 16 years old in my room, and like I got so excited, and I was like, I made it, like I'm here. And really, in reality, it was, terrible, and I was just learning or whatever. But yeah, I'd say around that time was when I started messing with it, and then just kind of progressed here and there, fixing things, and I guess just kept doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, when I think about music, and the pieces that I find like intimidating, daunting, impressive, there's several layers there. It's the creative component, starting from nothing, like something new, like creating sound, creating lyrics, a concept. And then there's also like the performance aspect, like you're hoping to convey this idea, message, what presence into a live audience or to an audience over digitally, over Spotify or the radio or what have you. Is there a part of music that you find the most difficult or comes to you maybe the least naturally?
I would say probably the writing, like the lyricism. I think, more naturally a player, and because of that, I can perform. Because I always feel uncomfortable on stage if I don't have a guitar in my hand, right, or like an instrument in my hand. And so I think my weakest point and like most frustrating, difficult point is the writing. I can't. I know some people, friends of mine, that can just sit down and just piece words together like that, and I really have to like have like a full on like emotion, thought, full day. Like I have to be inside of that subject, like physically, mentally, to write about it. And I think that's frustrating because I wish I could just crank them out all the time,
Hmm.
which I guess I can, but to me they don't feel as meaningful, And then if I don't feel like it's meaningful, I doubt anybody else will. And I think I struggle with that a good bit. Like I have to feel and be inside of the song to write about it. But
You
also,
you want it to resonate before you're willing to put it out.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's great. I get the sense that I would feel the same way, but I can play out hypotheticals about my music career all day long. It doesn't make it any more real. Um, so when you wrote lyrics for the first time, do you remember why you were doing it? Was there any like specific reason or thought or feeling that you were trying to encapsulate, or was it mostly just like I'm gonna throw spaghetti at the wall and see the shapes that stick?
Yeah, I would totally say it was kind of a um, trying to just release emotion almost. I'm a pretty sensitive guy, and I'm also like I said earlier, I'm more of like a people watcher. And when I was younger, I would find myself being really quiet a lot, and just kind of like taking in everything around me. And I think once I got to like my early teen years, or like 12 or 13, that I needed to like get that out. And I think, yeah, the first couple times, really, it was like kind of a release, and it just kind of came out and happened. And I was like, okay, now all I have to do is like, write heart and then rhyme it with something, just got to tie the ends of each line together, and I can actually, make a song out of this. But yeah, I think it was definitely being, not feeling like trapped necessarily, but feeling a lot of emotions and being like, all right, how do I get this out and portray it through song. You know, just kind of, that's what felt natural to me, was to write about it. So it kind of came together that way, I guess.
Yeah, that's cool. It's I think that's such a cool thing for you to learn about yourself, especially during such like a transformative transitional time. You know, I think not a lot of people who maybe have a good propensity or a talent for that like ever learn that about themselves
Yeah,
or find the equivalent kind of way to express themselves. So for you to identify that at that point, that seems like that'd be such a crucial thing for you to learn about yourself. Did that help you like navigate that's at your teenage years and high school and everything like that?
totally, man. It helped me grow a lot, just internally. But it was also kind of scary, because it was like, okay, now I've let all of this out, but it's in a song. So what do I do with these songs? Like, do I let people hear them? Because like, this is kind of who I am. You know, that was like my way of expressing what was going on inside. So it was pretty scary for a long time to like let people listen to that, because like I said before, it wasn't just like a song that rhymed with random stuff. It was like, hey, I'm actually showing you a piece of me. So like,
Mhm.
be careful what you say about it. You know, like, don't
Yeah.
say bad about me. You know.
So the vulnerable piece, like it's so true to like the essence of who you are. Yeah. No, I can imagine that'd be really really frightening to have like that piece of your heart like outside your body, like just open for people to poke at and stuff.
They can poke at it anytime, you know, if you put it out like that. That was what was most scariest. It was like, they won't just hear this once. You know, you can always, as a person, just telling somebody something, you know, you can always slip up and be like, oh, I just won't say that again. But you know, you put a song out that is you, essentially, like, they can go listen to that anytime they want. You know.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, 100%. Yeah, it's a no, that that's a frightening thought for me. Uh, I don't really think of, this in the same degree. I think it's far less intimidating, but doing like this podcast even of like this is a little bit of what I want to express about myself is like lifting up others and kind of pointing to things that I think are really impressive. Um, but but yeah, I don't know, doing it, I don't want people to look at like my setup or whatever and be like, "Oh, he didn't care to, I don't know, make an intro or do whatever." And
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, man. Yeah. But I
yeah.
think, in a way, like, stepping out and doing something like that, it you know, you're not going to get it perfect. You know, I mean, none of us will. So it kind of teaches you in a way to not necessarily care about what people think, because like, you're never going to actually perfect it, and
Mhm.
accepting that idea really makes you better at what you're doing, because it's like, I'm just going to roll with my growth, you know. And then before you know it, dude, you keep doing it long enough, and you got a bunch of fans, and you're like, whoa, like, this is crazy. Like, people actually dig this, you know, because I let those people that didn't dig it out of the way, and now it kind of lets you see who's there vibing with it. You know, it's pretty cool.
No, that I love that. That's such a cool thing. Obviously you went to Vestavia, and I think that something that I struggled with for a while is it felt so like insular to me, and it felt like it didn't feel like there was a lot of room in some situations. And I don't think this was anybody's fault. This was like my own perception, and I probably had so many things wrong about how I was viewing it, but just the way that I was like expressing myself, relating to others, it felt very narrow, and I saw a lot of growth in college and after high school, kind of being away from Batavia for a while. Did that have any kind of impact on how you related to music, wrote music, anything like just that environment, let's say?
Yeah, yeah, I'd say so. In a way, I kind of almost missed the simplicity of being in that town, though, and being around those people, you know. And like you said a second ago, like, I totally agree with the fact that I may have perceived all of that, kind of like no room to express yourself. I may have perceived that in the wrong way. But that pressure on myself, like looking back now, more mature than I was back then, like it was good for me, and yeah, I think leaving that was great for me, and it was like a sigh of relief. But then I was like, oh wait, but now I'm in the real world. Now I have to go play to random people. I don't know. And there was a front and back side to all of that. Like,
Sure.
it was relaxing to play to random people sometimes, and then other times it was like, oh, they're also just random people. Like, should I share this? It can be scary both ways, but yeah,
That's interesting.
yeah. It gave me a lot more freedom, I'd say. But then there's always, the grass is always greener on the other side, no matter where you are. I believe in that. But yeah, I'd say it definitely changed a good bit. It
Yeah.
got harder in its own ways for sure. There's a lot more competition outside of just high school. I remember that was a huge thing for me. Was there were certain people within the school that played music, and it was all love, but we got after it, and that was fun, kind of growing together and being like, all right, he's doing that. He lives 2 streets over. Like, let me do this. And you miss that getting out of those teenage years, and then you realize like, oh wait, there's guys that have been playing out here and in the industry for like 20 more years than I have, and
Mm-hmm.
but yeah,
No,
definitely changed a good bit. But
no, that's cool. I love hearing you say that too. Um, so obviously, country music influences your work, and your sound. But what's something that we might not expect would be an influence um, on the way that you write or the way that you play? You mentioned John Mayer, and I think that it's any guitarist should aspire to some level of skill demonstrated by John Mayer. But are there other artists that we wouldn't arrive at on our own if we were trying to guess what Anderson Gore listened to growing up, or looks to for inspiration?
yeah, definitely, man. Like I said before, my dad was a huge music fan, so I got to hear a lot of that stuff, and I took what I loved and kind of left what I didn't. Um, but yeah, I'd say like, I mean, I remember in high school, man, I went through a huge phase of the 1975. I loved how like emotional his writing was and how open he was. I kind of envied that. I kind of aspired to be as open as him when it came to like writing. I also loved the way that they portrayed their emotion through their music. I think those melodies really resonated with my brain, and it was very freeing, that sound, and I just loved it, man. And then I'd say earlier high school, mid high school, a lot of punk rock. I loved Blink 182. I loved Green Day. I loved Led Zeppelin. I love that old rock. Um, yeah, I'd say there was a lot of rock involved.
Mhm.
Just heavy guitars, heavy drums, and those being my main 2 instruments. That was a must. And I think the country comes in with just kind of how I was raised. Like, everyone in my immediate family, and even grandparents, aunts, uncles, theirs, cousins, everybody listened to country, and we were just kind of like a country music family. And my dad was kind of the one that branched out and listened to all the other stuff, that like the taboo music. And I think that was, I spent a long time kind of discovering other stuff, and finding out what I liked. But the older I've gotten, the more I've realized, like, I think that's a bigger part of me than any other genre.
Sure.
Yet all these other genres are playing into that country, which I think you see in the country music industry a lot now. And there's some
Mhm.
guys changing it, and there's some people that love it and people that are pissed off about it. And like, there's just this fusion of all these different genres pouring into country right now, and
Oh yeah.
I wanted to take part in that. The past couple of years, I've been like, man, there's just something about playing country that just feels like home to me.
Yeah.
But yeah,
No, no, that's very cool. For me, like genres and subgenres are like it's so much about like a culmination, or like just this big mix, like amalgamation of like other stuff. And I love like getting to hear like where people like kind of derived that from, because like I don't know, it's just crazy where all of these different influences can kind of lead to. Like,
Totally. Yeah.
but like one of the biggest examples that I kind of think of is like Dr. Dre started in like a disco group. And like before he was like mixing and emceeing and like getting involved with like rappers and NWA, like he was like in like the disco kind of scene. And that's just like so crazy to like think about any kind of like transformation to like going to different sounds there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you mentioned like a lot of the transformative like sound in country music now. Is there? I bet I could think of some artists for you, but what who is that to you?
Well, I love, like I said, The Rock. I think Co Wetzel is a
Mm.
huge. Um, what's the word I'm looking for here?
It's a maybe just example of that or
Whatever. Yeah. Yeah, he's definitely like mixing like some punk rock with country right now.
oh 100%.
Even Morgan Wallen. I mean, he's the number one artist in the world right now, and he's mixing a lot of pop with it. I know the pop country thing has been going on for a little while now, but I mean, he's putting a lot of like hip hop in country, and
Yeah.
I mean, look at David Morris. I don't know if you know who David Morris is, but he's doing like a lot of like rap country, and like hip hop. And there's still a lot of country people that I know that like really identify with that, even though it's not like, Dust on the Bottle, David Lee Murphy, or like, it's not Conway Twitty or
Mm-hmm.
Hank Senior. Also, I mean, Sam Williams. I mean, that's Hank Senior's grandson. I've played guitar for him for a while, not as much anymore, but a lot of his music is not like his granddad's or his dad's, Hank Jr.'s.
Yeah.
It's country music that is blended with his influences through growing up in this day and age. I don't know. So a lot of people are doing it, man. I've got a lot of respect for it, honestly, and I can kind of relate to that like movement out of the norm with it. Like, I grew up playing a lot of indie and rock back in high school, and I remember people being like, "Oh, you're not a country musician, or you can't write country music. Like, that's so weird. Why is he doing that?" And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, y'all knew me at one point in my life, and this is actually how I grew up. You might not have known that. Looks like you didn't know me that well.
Yeah. No.
That's
It's a
how get to know me.
Yeah, that's great, and I love what you shared. Like, yeah, like the indie piece. I think, like Zach Bryan, like that was like one of his biggest influences was like the Lumineers, and he shared a screenshot recently of like when he was like first like starting to release music, like he sent like an Instagram DM to the Lumineers and was like, hey, like I'd love to like play with you someday, or like something like that. Now I think they're like they're opening for him like on his tour and stuff, which is so cool.
Oh, that too, man. That's crazy. I'd never heard that about him. DM them or anything like that.
So yeah, he shared it somewhere, but no, I love that. With my relationship with country started like my intro was some of the like pop country, like a Jason Aldean, Luke
Yeah.
Bryan kind of thing, and it I it's funny because I went through um like just like this initial introduction to it, and that was what I thought of country for a while. Like that's what I thought that it was, and then more and more that you get introduced to different things, different subgenres. There's bluegrass and outlaw country, and like what with the conclusion that I kind of came to is like with every genre that there is something that you could find that you would like there like I'm not like a big like metal person per se, but there is like some iteration of metal out there that I would like, or there's some iteration of classical music that I'd really like jam with, vibe with, something like that. And so I don't know if you if you feel that way, or you're it's a like I don't know. I think music is so interesting, and
It
um
is. That's um, this may be, I feel like we're talking about the same thing, but I mean, even with country, like I feel like there's a lot of people now because it's moving so fast that are like putting their finger down on like the country button, like what is the country button? Like,
Mhm.
what is country? A lot of people say Jason Aldean. A lot of people say Hank Williams Sr. A lot of people say Hank Williams Jr. I mean, some people say Morgan Wallen, but like you can't really pin any of it down. Like there's, like yeah, there is the main genre and all these subgenres, but I mean, like what even is the main genre?
Yeah.
There's a version of like you just said. I'm not a huge metal fan either, but I'm sure there's some kind of version of it. Like there were some back in high school, like what is it, prog rock or like math rock
Yeah, yeah.
that I really got into. Like Animals as Leaders. I remember their drummer just blew my mind, and those guys were just. I mean, it was still kind of metal, but I loved it. And I don't know. Yeah, it's really hard to put your finger on, man. Music's such an interesting thing. Um, anybody can like any of it, and it can all be so different while being so the same. I don't know. It's really
No.
not put your finger on the button,
Yeah, 100%. I think of it as like context bound too. Like there's a lot of music that like is very like ingrained specifically to me to like driving to school like with my brother and like our carpool and like or driving home from track practice because it was just like how the CDs lined up in my car or like this is the playlist that like all right I have 8 minutes to like get up the hill like from the Piggly Wiggly like to or
Right.
the Western I mean like yeah, I have this long to get there so like I'm gonna make my ideal playlist and I'm gonna listen to this for like 30 days of school basically
Yeah.
but then also like I have some like very specific songs that I think of with like my freshman year of college or like when like my daughters were born and like with the songs that I would listen to like walking them around at like 3 a.m. and stuff like that. So um is there like a big example of that for you like a song that's really like context bound like super specific that you're like you hear that song and you're immediately brought to like that place?
Yeah, man. Honestly, me and Kenzie, it's funny you said that. We were talking about this a couple days ago. We were at my parents' house, and my dad went through a huge Alan Jackson phase when I was like 2 or 3, and it was not long after 9/11 when he wrote that "Where Were You When the World Stopped Turning" song. And
Mhm.
when I hear that now, man, it brings me back to sitting in that first house in the basement with my dad, and he would just like come home from work, and I just sit there with him and we listen to it, or just driving around in the truck. I remember. Let's see, Bon Jovi. That's what he listened to a lot back then. And we would go like to soccer practice or something with the windows down, and he went through a little Bon Jovi phase, and that throws me back. Yeah, I mean, my dad was such a heavy music fan, man. There's plenty of that, but I mean, I'd say like certain songs bring me back to like relationships in high school.
Mhm.
Some of that, man, I can't even listen to. I think. Do you ever find that like certain memories can, even if they're like happy memories, that it can kind of wear that song out for you?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. Yeah, do you mean by like frequency, like it gets played so much, or it's like,
Just because,
um,
yeah, from its frequency.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I feel like I'm getting really close to like thinking of like a good example for that for me, but no, definitely like there are certain songs that like I am pretty like apt to skip because of like it's worn out
Hmm.
because of like a certain time in my life, or like a specific kind of playlist. Also like radio play. Like I don't really listen to the radio anymore, but
Really,
I it's like Happy by Pharrell. Like I just like I can't do it. And like
it's
by and
so
large, probably like a pretty good song. But it like it was like it probably wasn't even overplayed much more than like any other song gets overplayed. But for me, it like just rubbed me the wrong way a lot. Um, so that was kind of around the time I started to like exclusively like dive into like listening to artists like discography or like albums like specifically on rotation rather than like the radio. But yeah, that was like one thing for me was like if a song was overplayed on the radio, then I was pretty burnt out and done with it. Like Blurred Lines, dude. I loved the song the first time I heard it.
Feel that, man.
Um
That one got old pretty quick for me as well.
so fast. Yeah, I don't know like it I don't know if it was like the nature of the song in like concert with like how overplayed it was, but dude, I was done with it pretty quick.
I feel you. Is there a? I'll ask you one more question. Is there a song that you've never gotten tired of that you've like listened to since you
Yeah.
were young?
Yeah, and I've got the answer right away. It's Go the Distance from the Hercules soundtrack. So that movie was so ingrained in my childhood. It was like a very specific one for me, and I like that was like the VHS tape that I wore out a lot. And there were plenty of others like too. There's there's so many other like Disney movies like that, but I I get chills every time I listen to that song.
Yeah,
I won't grow tired of it. I really won't. Like I think I would be pretty immune to like getting tired of it. I really think so. Is there a song like that for you?
yeah. My dad used to drive a Mitsubishi Galant when I was in like first or second grade, and my parents only had one car, so we'd say bye to mom. We'd hop in the car, and I lived right behind West Elementary, and so he'd just drive me down through the line or whatever, and it would take a few minutes. And every morning, dude, we would flip through. I think it was like 102.5 and 104.7, and just I remember like praying that we would hear "Life Is a Highway" by Russell.
Oh yeah.
Some mornings we'd get it, and some we wouldn't. And I remember I'd be so bummed when we didn't. But even still now, like you just said, dude, I still get chills. I listen to it every time it comes up on Spotify. You know.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. And yeah, no, I totally agree. There's some endless like replayability about that too. I'm sure for a lot of people it's pretty like tied to cars. Like that it was that was kind of it for me.
Yeah, that's how I found it for sure. And
Mhm.
love it. Always, growing up on NASCAR and being just a racing fan, and also loving rock and roll as a kid. Just that was one that I could just like rock out to. I still
Yeah,
feel it to this day.
definitely. Such a banger. That's a great point. Um well, I like to ask this question a lot because I think it's important to identify when you are, occupying a space, a profession, what have you. But what impact have you seen yourself making? That could be to your your own self, family, coworkers, like even like people who are relating to your music. But um, I think it's important to acknowledge like the ripples that we're sending out. So what impact have you seen yourself making?
But with my first single, it was called "What You're Looking For," and I kind of wrote that about um, like losing somebody, whether just in general, like whether it's a friend, a girl you're in a relationship with, a family member. Um, it was kind of like portraying like losing somebody in like a negative way, like you did something wrong or they did, and like I don't know why you're leaving, but like I hope you find what you're looking for. And I had some people that kind of follow me here and there. I don't have a ton of followers, but there's people here and there that will reach out from even like different parts of the country. And there were like 5 or 6 people, man, when that song, it was like the first 3 or 4 months that it was out, that were like, hey, this actually meant like a lot to me. And some of them even shared like their story a little bit of like how they related to it, and that was really cool, man. Because like I said before, I like to write music that's going to resonate with people in truth.
Mhm.
I don't want to write. I don't want to take somebody to dreamland and make them forget about their problems. I'd rather people like hear it and like face it and be like, oh, now I really connect, because that's like true. Like it
Yeah.
actually happened. And that was a big meaningful moment for me, even though it was like 5 or 6 people, man. That was huge. Like, dang, this guy, he went through the same thing I did in some ways, and liked that somebody spoke up about it, and got it out and communicated it. Yeah, that was cool. And Last Name that I wrote for Kinsey, that seems to be like the most popular of the 3 out right now. And
Sure.
I think, you know, most people fall in love. It seems like, you know, everybody does. And I think people they've seen me post about Kinsey, and they just love that song and how I wrote it for her. And you know, I see people putting that song in their playlist. It'll be like the playlist name is like For My Wife, or like For
Mm.
or for Sarah, or whatever, you know. So or it'll even be like some girlfriends, like for their guys, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's cool, just knowing that like people are thinking about their person, significant other, just, you know, because I was, you know, and put a song out about it. That's been cool to see that. But
No, I love that.
and not just with my music personally, but
So that's got to be cool, is especially with, you know, it's early in the podcast we talked about the your creative process, the way that you relate to your own music and experiences, you know, having wanting to root that in truth and true feelings, like to I imagine that that's got to be such a cool experience, such a like a unique, like I don't know, experience, like the way that you've sent something out, you've bared your soul in a lot of ways,
yeah,
and somebody's like, yeah, me too. Like
yeah,
it's a that it's a we I feel in this moment for this thing that we're talking about here in front of us, like we're the same. Like it's that's yeah, that's so raw and beautiful.
yeah, man. I think it almost gives you like a little sense of friendship with a random person, which is that's the biggest like rush I get from my music right there. Like I've done like the play guitar loud on stage thing and like play a solo in front of somebody, but like it doesn't compare to like somebody being like what you just said, like, hey, I felt that and you wrote that. Like you're almost kind of friends and connected in that way instantly, which is that's the greatest feeling to me ever, man. And I'm a human lover. I love people. I always try to connect with people, even in conversation, as much as I can. Sometimes it can be annoying to people. Well, my bad, man. See you later. Maybe never, but yeah, that's really cool, man. And I'm thankful for that, for those people, really. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. I love that. Um, well, it's a I've got this next question here is has performing changed the way that you relate to music, be that like your own music or others, like the way that you the feelings that you associate with songs or instruments or whatever, lyrics, like or just like attitudes about like certain things. It's I know for me, this is a very silly example, but I remember playing Rock Band, like, with my brother, and,
Totally,
uh,
man.
I I remember, like, because I was, like, playing well, whatever instrument I was playing, I remember hearing that part in the song,
Hmm.
like, that much louder, and I remember being in band in middle school, like, when I was hearing like, I played the euphonium or the baritone,
Hmm.
and I remembered looking for some of like sounds that were similar in other music and kind of like tuning into it a lot. And I imagine if you like play percussion, you're looking for that like much that that sound. So that's the example that I kind of think of, but it could be completely different. So did it um that was my experience with like playing music and then relating to it differently was I was looking for different stuff.
Yeah.
But what is that like for you?
I think the biggest way that it's changed the way I listen to music or hear music now, um, some of it's been negative. Like I grew up like I can relate to you on the Rock Band thing. Like growing up playing all these classic songs on Guitar Hero, and just like feeling like I was on stage as a kid, and just like wanting that and kind of that only. Once I got older and started playing on stages in front of people, it like wasn't what I thought it was, you know, and it was actually more like this is more real, you know, and it's not necessarily such a dream anymore in my head, you know. It didn't necessarily fulfill the expectation I had, like emotion wise or feeling wise, like
Mhm.
didn't feel as much like a rock star. And so I think some of that changed the music I liked. It was like, okay, well, that's never really going to be how I want it to be. So I think that's how I started moving around in genres. And also I kind of lost that like thought in my head when I'm listening to headphones, like, oh, I can see myself rocking on stage to this. That kind of left a little bit. It would still come around, but yeah, it definitely changed. Not just the way I listened to the music, but the way I played the music. It kind of both changed a little bit.
Okay. Interesting. Maybe like the way that you were trying to present yourself, like when you're on stage.
Yes, and
Yeah.
yeah, and not listening to music for the thought of rocking out anymore. In my ears, like I was like, okay, well now I should probably start like focusing on like writing music, because that's not at all the way it is. Yeah, that's probably just about how that changed. But
Okay. That's interesting. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
totally,
That's cool. I don't know that I would have thought of it like that,
yeah,
because I don't know. I have this thought a lot, is that I think that when you're a kid, like watching the Olympics, like you imagine very much like what it would be like to swim in the Olympics,
yeah,
or like run track in the Olympics, or like whatever the event is. So I imagine that like that it's not a one-to-one comparison, but like you it like a grounding kind of experience of like, oh, like I'm probably not going to be like Led Zeppelin and like melt faces, or like, or do everything like that, but I can do something that's maybe even more meaningful to me if I turn into something that's like true to what what I am about.
yeah, totally. Because I think for a long time, as a younger kid, my dream was to just like rock on the stage. Like playing in front of 50,000 people in a stadium, and just feeling that. When as I got older, obviously you mature and you have more responsibility, and you even think about those videos of Led Zeppelin playing for those stadiums. I mean, like I started realizing like, oh, those guys may not have been having fun every night. Like it became work.
Mhm.
Those guys have families, they got problems, they got things they're also thinking about as well as that. So I think it definitely changed my outlook on what I wanted with music. But yeah, that's a good example with the Olympics, man, because you could also watch that as a kid and be like, oh, I would have run faster than that, But then you're in that moment at 25 or however old you are, you're like, damn, my chest hurts, like my body.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe this, or like I can't believe like the amount of dedication. Yeah, so like I swam growing up,
Yeah,
and and like obviously my like Michael Phelps wins, eight gold medals, and I'm like, I could do that, and I'm 5'6". Like I'm not I'm not going to the Olympics for probably anything. But yeah, I'd say like it's I like that thought of like maturing in the way that you relate to the sport in general, or the music in general. It's different. It's very cool.
and
Uh,
everybody's different too. Like other people still have that dream of like, I just got to make it to the stage, And it's funny watching all these different people around me progress in different ways, and even people that I collaborate with, like how we each progress together, and our different dreams, goals, and the way we handle them. It's very interesting, dude. It's a lot of fun. And that also like brings a point up to like a band, that can be hard to do because everybody's got their different motivation, they got their different goal in general with what they want, and meshing all that together and being like the push pull and like how do we
mhm.
circle whirlwind going forward, like it can be fun. It's interesting, man. It's
Yeah. I would imagine that there's a lot of like me personally, in my world, I've identified like what is the gold standard, what is it is exactly that we should be aiming for. It's like, oh, I'm going to be that's a like the best, yada 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 yada, or like success to me is probably measured by a completely different metric, whatever it is. Like I want to do this many live shows in this many intimate settings, or some people are like, I want to gain this many Instagram followers, and like have this many songs go viral on TikTok,
yeah,
or whatever. But so yeah, I imagine that like playing with people like over the course of time like that, it's like probably a lot of hard situations coming up, I
it's
would say.
Yeah, and I think it taught me a ton about myself. I think I had a long stretch of like ego with it. Like I'm sure everybody has that in different ways, but it taught me so much about myself, man. Like just working with people. Um, I worked solo for a long time, and then getting in, 4 or 5 bands by the time I was 21. And some of them failing. All of us had our own faults, but I mean, like I remember just looking back on it even now, like I'm like, man, if I had just like slowed down, and gave more room and one path of success isn't the only way to get there. Like
Okay.
yeah, I learned a lot, man, and it'll show you real quick. That's why, like, you think about, like, I mean, you did a lot of sports growing up, didn't you? I mean, you ran
Yeah,
a
yeah.
man. It was always really hard for me to be on a team, and
Okay.
like a ton of respect to coaches for like reining people in. I mean,
Yeah.
everybody's got difficulties when it comes to working with people in their own way, but man, like respect for like even Saban, like how do you even rein that many people in and make them do their job
Hmm.
with too far on their own,
Yeah, exactly. It's funny that you say that, like in conjunction like with Saban too, because like that's like such a big like mantra of his is like do your job, um, and yeah, dude, like like coaching. I've had a couple coaches like on the podcast. I hope to have some more, and that's yeah, it's like it's such an admirable thing. It's like how do you like you're not like wielding people because you can't really do that, but like you're trying to corral them in some aspect. Like I don't know, like that's like a part of why I wanted to do this podcast is like there's so many people out there doing stuff that like I don't know the first thing about that I'm like I want to get in your head a little bit of like why are you like why are you doing this? How are you doing it? Like how long did it take for you to get good at it? Like it's just it's so interesting.
it is, man. Yeah.
All right. Well, I've got one last question for you before we close out. And the tradition here is pretty new for the podcast, but the idea is the previous guest will leave a question for you,
Okay.
and I'll ask it. And then I'd like to extend the opportunity for you to ask a question of the next guest. So kind of a pay it forward in the drive-through situation, but with questions to get to know everybody in that way. So this question comes from Caroline Hardy, who was on the most recent episode, and I like this question a lot. I think it's really telling. Is what's the best piece of advice you've received?
When my dad did a lot of preaching to me, man. If I could choose one, man, off the top of my head, I'd probably have to say my grandfather. One time, I got fired from a job when I was 16, and he also worked there. And before I
Mm,
left, he told me, he was like, "Hey, man, you're gonna make mistakes, and you're never gonna get it right. You can only try your best to get closer to doing right all the time, right?" And that hit me. That wasn't verbatim. He was like just basically saying like, "It's fine, dude. You're gonna be okay. You're gonna make mistakes," and that always stuck with me because I don't know, being perfect is impossible, And he was kind of just like always a guy of like, "Hey, ride the wave, do your thing, do it well,
yeah.
yeah, man. I think that's it right there."
What a cool thing to share that moment of like grace with him because he probably like knew how much that feeling like sucked for you,
Yeah.
and probably like embarrassment of like dang like I
Talk
don't
my
want to get fired from this place that you also work at.
Yeah, yeah, that was tough. I wanted to go straight home, and I didn't want to talk to him, but it turned out good. But yeah,
Nice.
man, that's I've always kind of had that sticking around in my head closest. Lots of things, but that one has always stuck out. Like, and to hear your granddad say that, it's like kind of somebody, obviously you're talking to your dad the most, and maybe brothers if you've got them. Like you're going to see those men the most in your life, but to have your granddad that's a lot older and wiser and you respect, and he's always like a little bit scary when you're younger. Uh,
Mhm.
for him to say that, man, that was like it nailed the nail in, a little harder.
Love that. No, that's super great. Well, I like that. That piece from your granddad. That I think and endless people could apply that to endless situations. So, well, in turn, I want to offer you the opportunity to ask a question to the next guest, whoever it might be. What's something that you would want to ask them?
Let's see.
And be as silly or as serious as you want to. It's I don't want to box anybody in.
Gotcha. I'd probably say, what is your greatest accomplishment to you in your own way? Biggest, like, big deal or small deal? What's the most meaningful accomplishment to you, I'd say?
I really like the qualifier there of to you,
Yeah.
because um like subjectively we're looking at like other people's lives, and we would probably point to like very different things,
Yep.
and like not being intimately aware of the inner workings of somebody,
Yep.
for that they would say something that we wouldn't expect, something completely different. So I like the to you there.
Yeah, man.
That's good. I look forward to asking that question.
Cool, man.
All right, folks. That is going to wrap up episode 14 of When I Was Your Age. Thank you so much to Anderson for coming on the show. So excited to see the big things that you'll do, the music that you'll make, and good
Yeah.
luck this weekend, man. So super excited for you to get married.
Thanks so much, Roland. I appreciate it, man. And thank you for having me on the show, man. This has been a lot of fun. I've never done something like this, so that was really fun, man. I
That's
enjoyed
it.
it.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad that you enjoyed it. We are going to wrap up. And for those listening, if you made it this far, thank you so much. And we'll see you in the next one. Bye.